Joining us tonight, Kellyanne Conway, counselor to President Trump. Kellyanne, good to have you with us. I just got to congratulate you first with bringing some people who've been very wayward to heel.
Lou, this has really been the test of presidential leadership, and the president gets an A+. He's been working on fundamental tax relief and tax cuts since the transition, since really when he was elected. And this week is the culmination of those efforts. This will be a middle-class tax plan that brings major cuts of a generation or two, something we haven't seen in 36 years, probably ever. So what does it do? We're reducing the rate.
When you say 36 years, Kellyanne, I mean, you're taking us back to President Reagan, the 1986 Economic Recovery Reform Act. I mean, that's going big in bold, and so is the president in terms of his aims here. Is that level of change and tax reduction possible?
It is for Donald Trump as president. Let's see what Capitol Hill will do. We have the support of a lot of the small business groups and job creator groups on the outside. We've been working very diligently with them because we know this is a grassroots engineered effort. We want this to bubble from the bottom up. But you've got these Democratic senators in states, Lou, where people, employers, job creators, job holders, job seekers all want and deserve a tax break. I even think tax reform is sort of swamp-like semantics. It seems so meek when you think about President Trump's vision for making sure that job creators go from 35% to 20%. That spurs economic growth. That'll create more jobs. America's going to get a pay raise through this tax bill, and the middle class will benefit the most. They get a child care tax credit. The brackets shrink from 7 to 3, and the percentage you pay goes down.
Yeah, Kellyanne, I mean, we've already, of course, reported all of that, and our audience understands that. What I think is difficult for many people to understand, at least to this point, the discussion from the White House, from Congress and the Senate has been about a tax cut, a tax reform. It seems some in the party are pushing reform when the president keeps talking about an extraordinary, revolutionary, historically deep tax cut. So what becomes interesting is we know that the baseline here that the president, the cap is on taxes, he wants at least down to 20% instead of 35%, a 40% reduction in taxes for corporate America. But there's a lot of ambiguity. I mean, we listened to Gary Cohn, the president's economic advisor. I mean, I haven't got an idea in the world what's going to be done for the middle class, and that's where the president says his emphasis is.
The middle class will benefit from the president's vision. There's no question. In many different ways, they'll get an immediate
but we
tax.
We know how much for corporate America. We don't know how much for the middle class. And if they're the focus, when do we find out how much for the middle class?
Lou, the middle class knows what they pay right now, what bracket they're in, and so they can basically estimate what kind of relief that they will receive. But remember, too, if we make job creators more competitive, that helps everyone, because what happens is if you are that welder or that carpenter or that factory worker worried about keeping your job or looking for a new job, when you reduce the tax burden on America's job creators, you encourage them to stay here. And we also want to repatriate the $2.8 trillion in wealth that's legally parked overseas. We've shipped jobs and wealth overseas. You bring that home. And then you keep it fair as well.
I'm absolutely
and so
the
middle class benefits because the brackets are shrunk, but also the percentage that you pay in taxes goes down. Also, the exemption being doubled is very important to the middle class.
One instance, you're talking concretely, specifically, and understandably, I think, to everyone about a 20% cap on taxes for corporate America. There is just a lot right now on a tax cut that the president said is focused on the middle class we're not hearing about. You talk about repatriation of that corporate money that's parked in overseas banks. How is it going to be, how will the corporate America be incentivized to invest in this country?
Well, they're going to need to. It's a great question, Lou. They're going to need to. In the past, when job creators have received a major tax reduction, they have invested that money, by and large, back into their companies. They can give their employees raises, and they ought to.
No, I know what the possibilities are. I understand possibilities and the range of choices.
That's who Donald Trump is.
But what I don't understand is how are you all going to incentivize corporate America to do the right thing?
They should be incentivized because they want to hire Americans so we can continue to buy American, and you want to keep those factories here. You just do. Now look, you also see just the prospect of a tax revolution by President Donald Trump has led the stock market to explosive and historic gains. The GDP, the last president said 2% is the new normal.
I know that. Everybody watching and listening to you knows that. And we understand that this is going to be a work of art, political artwork, political craft. I was just curious about where we were with something that's very important, and I'm sure that in the days and weeks ahead we will see that.
It's a work of art, but the math lesson is important here too. You will pay less taxes, and people should think about how much more they're paying in direct and insidious taxes and regulations and user fees and all the rest of the nonsense over the last 8 to 10 years.
Thanks so much, Kellyanne.
Thank you, Lou.
Good to see you. Kellyanne Conway.